So, the person I've chosen for my unsung hero is Gilbert D. Bin, aka Gramps. He was born May 31st, 1926, so he's 98 years old. Some of the things that he has endured: Great Depression, he was over in Germany for the war, he raised 3 daughters, automatic hero, married for 70 years before Granny went to heaven, and through that time, his faith never wavered. He got that deer last year. He's planning on going out again this year. Gramps' middle name is Daniel. Tying it back to a story from the Bible, I'm going with Daniel in the lion's den. Kind of steps outside of the king's orders of not to pray unless it's to him, right? And paraphrasing a whole lot. But if you do pray to anyone, human or divine, you are going to be thrown into a lion's den. He kind of said, nope, not going to follow that. I know my God's bigger, greater. I'm going to do it my way. And continue to pray. So the guards challenged the king, said, hey, this guy's still doing what he's doing. You said lion's den. What's going to happen? King was a little reluctant, but said, hey, the law is the law. You got to go. So Daniel entered lion's den overnight, walked out, not a scratch on him. His faith was so strong in God. Both stories had such strong faith in God, their unwavered faith. It matched, it worked. Looking back, Gramps is a hero because he's made it 98 years, has lost his wife, has gone to the war, has done all these things, and not one time his faith has ever wavered in them 98 years.
Good morning. We are, if you don't know, we are in this series called Unsung Heroes, talking about people in the Bible, people in our life that are our unsung heroes, people that have invested, have showed their faith. And I thank Travis for sharing about his grandfather and the many things that he brought to him and was his unsung hero of his faith. And if you think about it, a lot of that is that consistency, right? Like his grandpa brought consistency to his faith. He walked through many tragedies, many different things, losing his wife, going through the war, all of that, and he did it just with an impeccable faith. And that's part of being an unsung hero is that consistency. And he talked about the story of Daniel. And the story of Daniel can be found in the book of Daniel, chapter 6. And we go through a lot of the different parts of the story of Daniel where he was in Judea, he was a slave, he was looked upon, right? Like he was, and I don't have enough time to go into all the different parts, but because of that, he found favor with King Darius. And Daniel found favor. King Darius liked Daniel, loved Daniel. He wanted to support Daniel. And there was this trickery that Travis talked about there where all the other leaders got really jealous of that because the slave has a higher power, has a higher ability than Daniel had. And out of that, they tricked the king into this moment of saying, if anybody prays to God instead of you, that they should, spend a night in a lion's den and obviously be eaten and all of that, right? Like all the bad stuff. And so they go through that entire story, and a lot of us have heard that story either growing up or it's one of those famous Bible stories that happens, and Daniel goes in and the little kid version of it, right? We talk about he's thrown in, and then you see a picture of Daniel like petting the lions like they're now his best friend. But really there's so much to that story as you read it and you see the power and the beauty of that. And the part that I think is amazing is as soon as that decree hits and they tell Daniel you can't pray, it goes to Daniel 6:10 here. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home, knelt down as usual, did the same thing he always did in his upstairs room with his windows wide open. He didn't try to hide it, and faced towards Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. The consistency there, right? Like so much of the parts of Daniel in this story of the lion's den is this beautiful part, but there's that consistency that we see with Daniel. And I love that he did. He prayed just as he always did. He prayed 3 times just as he always did. He didn't try to go, okay, I'm going to, and I think sometimes I get caught up in my own Christian faith, like, okay, I'm going to shy away. I'm going to hide away from this. He said, no, I'm going to do it just like I always did. The windows were always open. I'm going to have the windows open. I'm going to go to the same room and the importance of going to the same spot. And I'm going to be consistent because that's what my faith looks like. And he did that, and we struggle with that, right? Like, we struggle as Christians, and would any of us blame Daniel if he went, okay, I'm going to pray to God, but I'm going to do it in the basement. I'm going to make sure all the windows are shut, and I'm going to say one quick prayer instead of my 3 typical ones, right? Like, not a single person would ever be like, no, I get it. You're saving your life, man. That's great. But Daniel, he had faith. He trusted. And the part of the story that jumped out was that right there, that he did that 3 times. And then after all of this happens, and they look at him, and the king says, you're right. Daniel, you broke the law. I have to punish you. And I think the beauty in that story happens because he saw the consistency. King Darius, not a believer in God, right? Like, at all. What he says to Daniel is, he says, Daniel, I need you to go in the lion's den because that's the punishment, but I need you to pray to your God. Like, King Darius, who does not believe in God at all, says, I've seen something amazing in my friend, and I need you to pray to your God. I need you to do that. There's so much power when we are truly consistent in our faith. When we truly do what God has called us to do, the power of that. The power of Daniel being consistent. The power, as Travis shared, of his grandfather being consistent, walking through that, and not bending, not breaking, not falling apart. There's so much consistency. This week I got a chance to celebrate some consistency in our youth here at church. I love part of my job. I don't really call it I could call it my job because it's fun. My job is to go and support people, in the church and things that they're passionate about. And I love that I get a chance to go and watch a bunch of our youth do the things that they love. And Jamie supports me and says, yep, we'll figure it out. And my own 2 kids, yep, I watch them plenty, but I get a chance to go and support other kids. And this week was my week to catch as many things. I went to, my daughter's band concert, but I got to watch a lot of other kids from this church in their band concert. I got to go to football games. I got to go to cross-country meets. I got to do all this stuff, and I got to celebrate them and their consistency of working so hard at something they're passionate about. And it's just fun, right? Like, you get to see them interact. You get to see them do all this stuff. And so this week was just one of those fun weeks where Jamie and I looked at our calendar and said, we're going to be splitting, dividing, and driving every which way to support kids, to be there through that. So as I went through all of the consistency, and I thought of that, and I laughed because I saw all these parents. And when it's your own kid, you do it, and I get it, and I've done it for my kids, where you yell and scream at your kid, and especially in cross country, it's hilarious because you're watching, let's say 100 people at this regional meet, yelling at kids to run faster, do all this stuff, when literally 99% of us that are spectating could never do what any of them are doing. Like, I was thinking of that thought, and I was like, man, I would do maybe if I could do my dead sprint that I tried a couple weeks ago, I could keep up with them for maybe 2 seconds. Maybe 5 if I really, worked on it. But right, they're doing this for over 3 miles. They're doing this, and it's just crazy to watch the hard work that they put into it and that consistency. And my hope and my prayers, just like they work so hard in this, that they continue to do that over and over again. Because consistency means doing it over and over and over. And then I got the chance to cheer for one of our church members that just really made my heart just so happy, because they had the prom afterwards, and they had a chance to an open run afterwards. So Mike decided to run in this with all these elementary, middle school, other high school kids that didn't qualify for regionals. So I got a chance to scream and yell for Mike and tried my best to embarrass him in this open. So this was, but afterwards I went, that's really my unsung hero, because really he could have been like every other parent that just stood on the sideline and screamed and hollered and said, run faster. But he actually put his money where his mouth is, and in the open race afterwards said, okay, I'm going to run too. And I think your goal was to not get beat by more than 10 girls. Did you make that goal? Okay. But Mike did awesome, and I just laughed at that. So I had to throw that in there. But that was right. That's what we're talking about in being an unsung hero, is that consistency over and over again, and putting our money where our mouth is, and working on it, and trying to be better, and striving to be so much more. And we celebrate the things that our youth have done, and we celebrate those things. But my goal for them is that we invest in that and realize that this is a lifelong trait that they're learning. And I was reading somebody's Facebook post about the end of the football season. And they said, my hope is someday they will realize all of the life lessons that this sport has taught them. And really, that's the same thing, like, right? Like, we hope that as you consistently go through this stuff that you'll learn and you'll grow and you'll be more and you'll be better. But the problem with consistency is sometimes we forget to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So this, in my consistency of the craziness of the last couple weeks, this is my 2 weeks that Jamie and I joke about is all of my yearly checkups for all of the things that are wrong with me. So I have 4 doctor's appointments in 2 weeks. It's like my doctor's marathons. And Jamie laughs and she'll text me and be like, what doctor again today? And right, like I have to go see the hip doctor to make sure that my arthritis in my hip is going the right way. So I have that appointment and I sit through. And then I have to go through the guy that did the surgery and we have to do the checkup on all of that. And then I have, because I had a heart condition a couple years ago, I have to see a heart doctor once a year. And then overall, the cream on top of all that is I get my yearly physical. And for some reason, it always matches up in this 2-week period. And the thing about this is every one of those appointments look very similar. Okay, they break out their computer now. I used to say a sheet, but they break out the computer and they ask me all these questions about consistency. Are you doing the things that are you supposed to? Are you doing the morning exercises that you're supposed to? Are you icing your hip 2 times a day like you're supposed to? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? And they check all these boxes. And you get to your physical, and those, we all know how that goes. Are you doing those? Are you eating the right food? And it's the consistency. Yes, I'm consistently eating, but am I consistently eating the things that I'm supposed to be? I mean, if I look at the doctor and say, yes, I'm consistently having breakfast every morning. I have a custard-filled donut every morning. They're not going to be like, yes, you're doing the right thing. Way to go. That's going to help you, right? Like, it's all about the consistency, but it's also about doing the right thing in the midst of that consistency. And that's the part that I love about hearing Travis with his story with his grandpa, was walking through all of those seasons of life and doing the consistent right thing, but making sure that we're not just doing doing something consistently, but we're doing it right. We're following God. So my question for you is, as you grow in your faith, are you doing the things that you know that you need to do to grow your faith? Right? Like, I have conversations with lots of you, and I'm not going to embarrass anybody because you could embarrass me right back. But the stories that we have of walking through, and when we talk to individuals, or I have a chance to sit down with people, they talk about their faith, and a lot of times they're like, yeah, you know, I did really, really well. I'm trying to spend time with God, so I'm going for a walk, you know, every day, and I'm spending time for God, and then at 2 weeks that falls apart, or at 3 months that falls apart, or whatever period that falls apart. And the question is, are you getting back into that? Are you making sure you're doing the right things? Because I guarantee you this week at my appointment, it's not going to be all like, yes, you've been perfect, but we're going to have moments where we look at the doctor and I say, yes, I'm working on that. I'm just not doing it the right things enough. So we make sure that we do the right things. And when we provide consistency and we do the things the right way, we set tone for other people, and we set a tone for people that are watching us, but we also set a tone, as Travis has said, for generations. The Bible is completely filled with story after story after story of people that followed God in their faith story, and it affected generations to come. And when you think about it, yes, it's very important that your faith story is important for you and your personal walk with God. There's no doubt about that. But I need you to understand that it really does affect other people that you see, but also generations. Just like Travis's grandfather, and how it affected Travis and has made him the man of God that he's striving to be. We see that time and time again in the Bible, but we see that in studies. There's a couple studies done, one by Cornell University, where they say 9 out of 10 individuals, when asked, say that their grandparents affected their morals and their beliefs. 90% of people say that. There's another study done by a guy by the name of Vern Benston. Yep, I'm just using his name. I have no idea who he is. But I went through his study, and he followed people, families, for 35 years. And he did an entire study following them. And he said whether the parents believed or didn't believe or had morals or ethics or whatever, that a vast majority of them, of individuals in their faith, make sure I have the words right, it was highly significant how their grandparents' faith story lived out in their grandkids, regardless of whether the parents were Christian, non-Christian, or had any morals or beliefs. So the entire idea being that as a grandparent, you have an ability to affect your kids, your grandkids. for generations to come. The life that you're currently living, I understand that not a lot of us are grandparents in this room, but the life that you're currently living, it affects your personal belief, your kids' belief, obviously, but also your grandkids. For generations, it can help them show. And I love stories, and I love watching certain people in this church that come and make sure that their grandkids come because they see the importance of it. They see the part of that. I look at my own grandparents. And the stories that I have of my grandparents, my dad's dad passed away when he was 2, so obviously I didn't know him. But my other 3 grandparents, and I want to say, were far from perfect. But they demonstrated God in 3 very unique ways. My grandmother made sure that anybody in our family wanted to go to a Christian university would have that ability, that wanted to go to a Christian camp. She would use any ability she had to be able to further our faith, to send us different places. But she was super quiet about her own faith. But she had a faith in God, but she was super quiet, but she made sure that we could do that. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was more of that outgoing, would talk about stuff and would be very encouraging. And in his faith as a business owner, he would give all credit to God because he knew that nothing that his business ever, he owned a greenhouse, nothing in his business would ever flourish without God's help. And he saw that time and time again. And my dad's mom was an amazing, let's just you can have that stereotypical old Catholic lady, but she made sure that she was always at Mass, that she was always growing, that she was always crying out to God and believing in God and trusting in God, and she showed a dedication. So all my grandparents instilled in me those beliefs and the importance of that. And I know a lot of you are coming and can probably think of your grandparents and the things that they instilled in you. And I also understand, and I want to be honest, that I know that there's some of us in this room that our grandparents probably weren't the best figure for us. And maybe they weren't encouraging of our faith. And that's where we get to change that narrative and change that outcome for our generations to come, starting with each and every one of us. The importance of understanding that grandparents have an influence on their grandkids, their faith, and encourage their faith. They have an amazing ability to be able to share that, right? Like we share that all the time, and Jamie and I joke about that our kids' grandparents get away with stuff that we could never do, and they do things for our kids that we could never do. My mom was like the health food, like we had whole wheat bread, we had everything healthy, and for some reason now when my kids come over, she's like, "You want a cookie?" Right? Like it's completely, but she has that ability to invest and do things and speak a language into our kids. And Jackson and I were riding in the car the other day, and there was this test on the radio of all these kids' songs. And I was asking him how many of the kids' songs he knew from church. And he knew many of them. And he said, "Yeah, Grandma made me listen to all those." Right? Like, grandparents have an amazing ability to invest. So if you're in the age demographic right now as a grandparent, know that you're affecting generations. You're doing so many amazing things, and it's not too late to continue to invest in that. If you're a parent, understand that you're affecting generations. If you're not a parent yet, if you're whatever season you're in, we are affecting generations to come by the way that we behave, by the way that we act, and by that act of consistency doing the right thing. Just like Daniel in that book went up to the room, windows open, and was unashamed of his faith and knew that God would take care of him. We have that ability to demonstrate and to see that and let others see that. So this quote I found, and it really just hit home with what I was trying to say today, is just this, I think it's just a beautiful way of talking about the consistency in our faith. You have to keep speaking. You have to keep thinking. You have to keep believing, and you have to keep acting. It is not enough to speak the right things for a day or two. The miraculous is a product of consistency. If we can find consistency in our faith, if we can be like those well-trained, all those kids that are playing sports and the well-trained parts of that, if we can find that same consistency, that same determination in our faith to make sure that we're growing, we can be, again, somebody's unsung hero. We can be something, and we can show that. Because that's, again, for myself, there's so many people, it's so difficult for me to even to go through the number of people that I can list as one of the unsung heroes of my faith. But when we do that, we affect so many people, and we understand that power. So if nothing else today, I want you to leave you with this thought. Heroes, unsung heroes, don't just do good one time. They do the right thing consistently. What does that look like for you to do the right thing consistently? What is God calling you? Maybe it's to be in your Bible more. Maybe it's to spend time talking to him. Maybe it's spend time praying. Maybe it's spend time investing in somebody. What is it that God is calling you can do, and make sure that you're doing it consistently? Pray with me, won't you? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for the reminder in Daniel. We thank you for the reminder of his prayer and his consistent prayer life. The way that he sought you, God, even knowing that the punishment was coming. He knew the outcome was that he was going to be thrown into lions, and he still trusted. He still followed the consistency, and he did the right thing. He said, God, you are more important than any man. And God, may our story, may our consistency seeking you help others see you, God. Just like Daniel, may us living a life unashamed towards you, leaning into you, God, may others see that for generations to come. May we continue to lean into you, God, throughout this entire time. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Avoid these foods if you want to lose weight fast.
You're a female and you want to get toned and you want to get fit. You have
got a front row seat to the madness. I pick up my phone every morning out of habit. I've been fiending for the drama, yeah, I said it. I'm addicted to the rush, need a medic. When I take a step back, I can see it.